Hello everyone, my name is Emily Kosick and I'm the Knowledge Manager for the Canadian Institute for Public Safety Research and Treatment. Welcome to today's session, Peer Support Programs, an example from Ottawa. Before we get started today, there are a few housekeeping items I want to go through. All attendees are in listen-only mode. This is to limit feedback and noise. Today's session is being recorded. You'll be sent a copy tomorrow, so if you miss anything, you can watch it again. Just so you know, the GoToWebinar platform launch window can be blocked by some organizations. So if you're having trouble hearing or seeing, you may have to join us by phone. We will be looking for audience questions at the end of the session. So please send us your questions through the questions box or be ready to raise your hand to ask your question at the end of the session. Now let me introduce our presenters. First up today, we have Lorraine Downey, coordinator of the Ottawa Paramedic Support Group. If you want to give a wave there, Lorraine. Next, we have Lieutenant Scott Patey from Ottawa Fire Services, also part of the peer support group there. And last, we have Sergeant Brent MacIntyre, peer support coordinator for Ottawa Police Service. And if you want to give a wave there, Brent. I want to thank all three of you for being here today. And I am just going to put up your presentation so that we have it. Sorry, it's a bit slow today. All right, so Lorraine, I am going to turn it over to you and go ahead.
Thank you. So thank you. I'm Lorraine Downey. I am the peer support coordinator of the Ottawa Paramedic Service, and I've been doing it since 2014. This is my 15th year as a paramedic, and we're going to talk to you today about our unique peer support program that we've dubbed the Tri-Service. This partnership was born out of a grassroots desire to work together with our fellow public safety personnel at Ottawa Fire and Ottawa Police. So we'll switch to slides. So this is a service, this is a photo, all pre-COVID. As you can see, there's no mask. We wanted to let you know that we met informally when each of us stepped into the coordinator's role, and then we continue to meet regularly as part of the First Responder Mental Health Network collaboration. We are fortunate that our municipal public safety personnel, our police, fire, and paramedics are working collaboratively on peer support. We share resources, we learn from, and we support one another. We are 3 separate and distinct training programs with different structures, training, budgets, staffing, and resources. But regardless of our differences, we continue to work together and check in on one another. One of the neat things that we have amongst the 3 services is if there is a call that involves paramedics, police, and fire, and perhaps at the call, the paramedics are having a rough time and either the fire or the police notice that perhaps the medics are having a rough time. We have a system in place where the police officer or the firefighters can let their coordinator know, and then Brent, Scott, or Alan would let me know to maybe check in on my medics, which we have done in the past. So that's a nice, another kind of set of eyes on our people, which has been great. We share resources, we share training opportunities. We're learning to identify gaps and how are we going to address them. We've hosted clinician sessions where clinicians can learn about the intricacies of public safety personnel, our similarities, our differences, some of the cultural considerations that they need to have before working with us, because we can be a unique group. What I wanted to really emphasize is that we share the same philosophy as a group, we care and we have each other's backs. So next slide. So just, again, these are some photos of my peer support team. I have a great team, a couple of different timings. This is the larger group. This was about 45 of us a couple of years ago. And then you can see there's 6 new members that joined up in 2018. So our structure of our team is a little bit different than that. We have evolved. We were based as a citizen-based program in the 80s. And then in 2015, we really switched to a peer support model. The goal is to make it as easy as possible to access peer support. We're trying to share the responsibility amongst the employee, the peers, and the organization. We do not deploy automatically, but we have multiple points of entry. So an employee can ask, a supervisor can offer, a peer support member can initiate a conversation, management can initiate a peer support response after a large or critical event, and an employee or a manager can ask a peer support member to check in on another employee. We are lucky that we have a centralized location. So we have our headquarters, and then right beside our headquarters, we have our communications building. So all staff are in a centralized geographic location. The training for our peer support team originally was critical incident stress debriefing, but new training for our members since 2014 has really focused on crisis intervention, suicide prevention, and peer support. We were very fortunate in 2018 that Ottawa Fire offered up our new members the IAFF peer support training, which I highly recommend. We have had members trained in ASSIST. Thank you to Brent from Ottawa Police. We've had people trained in manners, mental health first aid, and then there's been a number of different programs offered through the Royal in Ottawa, and we've tried to send as many members as we could to those different programs. To get buy-in from our staff, initially when we switched the program over from a CISM base to a peer support base, we were part of the mandatory training. So every 6 months we have mandatory training. So peer support had a 1-hour chunk of that time to really talk to all the staff about, this is the new program, this is how we're gonna be doing it. And this was for all staff, not just the paramedics, but our communications and our logistics staff as well. So I volunteered into this position in 2014 and then was very fortunate in 2019 to be reassigned kind of permanently into peer support. I still do some road shifts. I'm still a primary care paramedic. We've also been very fortunate to have peer support members who are off on short-term or long-term leave, either on modified duties, that have been assigned to help with peer support. So clinical oversight of the team is provided by Samia O'Day. She's a City of Ottawa organizational health specialist. She's also trained as a psychotherapist. Prior to COVID, she worked regularly from our headquarters. Since COVID, kind of in between lockdowns, she's actually on site. We have about 800 staff. That includes our communications officers, our paramedics, our community paramedics, logistics staff, public education, and admin and support. So when we have an intake, our team members are nominated, they're interviewed, and they receive a variety of different training programs. There's no psychological testing, but we refer all nominees to the CIPSRT website to participate in a variety of questionnaires. After they complete the questionnaires, staff are asked to self-reflect on whether they think they're in a good place to take on the extra role of peer support. If they decide they have the capacity, they go through into the interview process. Since 2019 or 2018, we've noticed the number of our nominees have indicated their interactions with peer support have resulted in them wanting to become part of the team and give back to their peers. We're doing another intake currently. We're looking to add another 10 to 12 members. They will receive 2 days of in-house training with our clinical director and then 1 day of logistical training. We currently have about 42 team members. We're trying to get it up to at least 50 because we encourage team members to take a leave of absence as needed. For whatever reason, it can be personal reasons, workplace reasons, maternity, paternity, secondments, things like that. We have a very diverse group within our team with language, gender, rank, years of service, and lived experience. We've been very fortunate. Although we don't have a budget, we have had strong support from our management, previous and current, in terms of staffing time to provide peer support to our staff, training and support to members. We have a dedicated room, which is amazing. We have the coordinator admin role and then ongoing support. We ask on a multiple times, what else can we do for you? In terms of resources, in 2020, we launched a partnership with the Royal Ottawa to help support the peer support team members. We've had wellness sessions, information webinars, and we have virtual support sessions for the peer support team. We also are part of the OHRI Ottawa First Responder OSI clinic, and that's a clinic that we as peer support can self-refer or can refer our staff to that are in the orange or red zone of the mental health continuum. We are lucky as a group that we kind of maintain a clinician's list. So when a peer comes to me and says, Dr. So-and-so is amazing, we add that to our list. I share that with Brent, share it with Scott, and then we kind of had this list that we can share amongst ourselves. It's not something, we don't endorse anyone, but we share. So at least we have a common resource list that we can share amongst. We also have access as Ottawa Paramedics and Ottawa Fire to Morneau Chappelle, our EFAP program. And I'll get you to change the slides again, please. So here's a couple of our resources. We wear pins That was one thing. Identifiers have been amazing. We actually put together baseball cards. So with their name, contact information, we have those in our 2 buildings, so they're easily accessible to our staff. You can see our dedicated room. It's not big, but it's exactly what we need. We have brochures, other materials. So that's been some of the practical takeaways. Having a room has helped normalize and ensure the consistency of peer support. So normalizing peer support has been huge. We are very fortunate that, I don't know if everyone knows this, but there's a free app coming out, the On-Call app that CIPSRT has been involved with. So we're also going to be encouraging our staff to use that when the app comes available. Next slide, please. So some of our observations. One of the things we realized in 2020 was that face-to-face interactions were very important, and that became very evident with COVID. We saw a lot of our new staff being new to Ottawa, not a lot of friends, not a lot of support systems. They were very isolated, living alone, and our peer support team members highlighted the need and the demand for safe but physically distanced impromptu locker room chats, outdoor and hallway chats. In 2020, over a quarter of our staff accessed peer support in a more formal manner, and we had a high number of conversations with staff outside of a peer support official capacity. One of our challenges lies in how to engage our staff that are out of the workplace, either WSIB, short-term leave, long-term leave, and those working from home. The impact of peer support is hard to quantify. So anecdotally, we hear from staff that we've made a tangible difference in their life, but we've had a hard time quantifying the staff that we've provided. You know, did the support that peer support provided help keep an employee in the workplace or get them back to work sooner and successfully? By referring them to help, by regularly checking in on them, is that what they needed? And what exactly did we provide? Was it a gentle nudge to a mental health professional? Was it a referral? Was it regular check-ins? Or the fact that the employee felt someone with lived experience had their back? In the past year, we've also noticed that everyone needs support. It doesn't matter the rank or the position, everyone needs support within the organization. As paramedics, we classify as not just public safety personnel, but healthcare workers. So we have been doubly impacted by the effects of COVID-19. And we have never dealt with such a prolonged event. So we have yet to uncover the keys to sustainability for our peer support members. So I don't quite know how we're going to continue to provide this service of peer support as we go forward. It's an unknown for everybody. So one of the questions that I have is, how are we going to support the staff with lingering effects or the family effects from COVID? And this remains to be seen. But I want to move on to the last slide. And I want to thank Brent and Scott and Alan, who's not here, from Ottawa Fire, and Christine for the amazing support that we've had. And I want to finish up with one thing, that peer support is listening, but it's more importantly consistently being there. It's actioning help. It's modeling healthy habits like self-awareness, self-care, and empathy. It's building relationships with peers before they need peer support. It's reaching in to help, not expecting people to reach out. And it's persistently trying to improve. And this is something that we can all do. And we're doing it in Ottawa, and thanks to my peers. And Brent, it's all up to you. Scott.
Oh, there we go. Okay, first I'd like to take a second just to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm not going to stand here and try and say that we've got groundbreaking, riveting information, but the information we do have and what we are bringing to you is what we've developed working together, and I think Lorraine has spoke to that very well. But take it to one next step further and engage in things like these webinars as much as you can. We have learned as much in developing our programs from our networking and outside of our tri-service as well. So everybody has different ideas and different solutions. And there's one thing I've learned in working in this is that there's no one size fits all. So keep your ideas and your perspectives broad, and be open to things, particularly things that may be typically against the grain of your culture. And some of those can be kind of your biggest hurdles sort of things. So anyways, on to that. at Ottawa Fire, we've got kind of a multi-prong or five-prong approach to our wellness program. It's the IFF's International Association of Firefighters Wellness and Fitness Initiative. And the purpose of the WFI is basically to make sure that all our personnel, here it says uniform, but it also includes admin staff and whatnot, are healthy enough to come to work and be productive at work. But even more importantly, healthy in the majority of their other time, which is their personal time, private time with their family, and so on and so forth. This is, and this has actually been, this approach has been a really good selling feature to the regular membership sort of thing, because the three of us work in cultures where we're the helpers. We go in, we fix problems, we make people's bad days a little bit better. We're not always so well at asking for help and reaching out ourselves, and quite often we'll try to persevere longer than most will. But what's really important is that we can live a life that is going to be just as productive, whether we want to improve our time in our marriages, or with our kids, in our extracurricular, and so on and so forth. And this is kind of the focus of why we try and sell this to our general membership. Oh, and by the way, you know what? Fire service is going to benefit too, because you're going to be healthier, stronger, more mentally resilient. So it's kind of saying the same thing, but how we present it to our membership quite often, we present it a little bit differently, because it doesn't matter how right you are. It doesn't matter if you're the top academic in mental health, post-traumatic stress disorder, and everything else. If your delivery is not on with our cultures, there's pushback, there's resistance. So it's all about the, selling to the people that you're selling to, sort of thing. And we found that was pretty successful in encouraging buy-in over the last couple of years. Okay, next slide. I mentioned that it's a five-prong approach. The five components of the wellness initiative: behavioral health, which encompasses everything from, obviously, our peer support comes under that, but also healthy lifestyle, nutrition, a lot of the behavioral health components that we promote through that, whether it's yoga sessions, meditation, mindfulness exercises. We've partnered up with Brent and Lorraine, and we've actually had Buddhist monks come into the workplace and put on meditation workshops. They were really good at just kind of like dumbing it down and keeping it simple, again, knowing who their audience is. I have to be honest, when we first started talking about this, and it's like, yeah, I can dig this. I work with 1,500 people that may not quite dig it. And I was like, oh, what the heck? And I was really overwhelmed. Brent had called me at one point on the day before, and it says, okay, hold off on the number of people you can send to the session we were having at the Police Association Club, because we were taking up the 25 spots pretty quickly. So some of these things we talk about, and some of the things you're hearing about out there as far as positive behavioral health and some of the different things, that they're not fringe. I mean, some people say, oh, that's fringe behavior, those fringe no, it's not. I mean, they've been around for 1,000 years and more, thousands of years. So it's more, again, helping our members appreciate and understand how this can help them in an acute moment, but also as an ongoing, moving forward daily life, to give them the strength that they need to be the best at home, be the best with their families, be the best in their own extracurricular activities, and again, to be the best, in our case, firefighter or police or paramedic that you can be. Fitness is obviously a big component of it. No brainer, that's the easy sell in all three of our sectors. We tend to be physically minded, but then you still run into the individuals, quite often ones who have struggled with mental health, where they're dealing with depression, PTSD, other OSIs, and one of the, many of you are aware, depression and things like that can be major symptoms. And then you have demotivation factors and so on and so forth. So quite often we find that a lot of our fitness focuses tend to be on the second half of the generation, the top end generation sort of thing, or the older half of our workforce. Some of them it's just, you know, hey, everybody or most people were in pretty good shape in their 20s and you hit your 40s and 50s and not so much. So sometimes it's just life. So we put a lot of focus on that to make sure, again, that they're healthy at home, they're physically capable to pick up those grandkids and play with those grandkids, but they're also able to physically and safely perform their duties. Rehabilitation, this year has two components. It has a mental health and a physical. Again, a lot of the material we're looking at on the mental health side of stuff is a lot of the cognitive behavior therapy options that are out there and promoting them. It's tied into a lot into our mental health awareness and educating our members through some of things like R2MR and some of the training opportunities we've had through the IFF. And then, of course, medical, specific screening, again, medical as far as from your physiological, but we've also integrated, and that's when this was originally created, that was kind of the focus. But now we're also getting in and promoting the importance of going and finding a therapist, which is the right fit. Whether it's a psychotherapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, you know, a guru out in the middle of the woods, whatever works for you. Check it out, invest in it, try it, because that's the only way you're going to find it works. So the big thing we're promoting is that people find that clinician and get in the habit of checking in with them at least once a year. We have our annual medicals. We have all the things that come on with later life medicals and all those things. Well, sitting down and talking to a psychologist for 45 minutes or an hour to check in might be, less intimidating. So we're really encouraging people to invest into your mental health and reach out, find that clinician, develop the relationship. And then one of the big benefits from that is then years down the road, something happens, tailspins go, and when they're in less of, have less of an ability to maybe find that right person because of where they're at and, in their mental capacity or mental state at that time, they've already done that. And not only done that, they also don't have to take the first several sessions to get to know this individual because they've already done that also. So they find they can get into the actual things, the meat and potatoes of what's useful. And then, of course, the third part, and this speaks again to the challenges that Lorraine talked about as far as trying to extrapolate all the benefit and the data and everything else to show, how we're improving and how these programs are benefiting, because ultimately we're going to management staffs who are going to councils to get approval for this stuff. And that's where the challenge is. But we're working on coding systems for members so that it protects their anonymity. But even with all that aside and the difficulties that we've run into this, having a meeting with one of our previous fire chiefs a couple years ago, he actually spoke anecdotally, and to have your lead of management say that we haven't seen the hard data, but we're seeing less people off. And now this is more to the physical side, but we're seeing less people off on material injuries, the duration that they're off, the loss of earnings that are being submitted for WSIB. Anecdotally, they're down. And he's like, keep it up. And just to get that from kind of like your commander-in-chief sort of thing, it's very encouraging because you're always wondering what's going around in their head, and but I really have to take the time to tip my hat, and this isn't pounding the fire drum or the OFS drum, but we were very fortunate over the last few years to have a very supportive management team. They've given us everything that they could, not always necessarily everything we asked for, but most importantly is they gave us a real positive working relationship. And I'm sure there's people in the audience today that are from both sides of that table. That's key. That really is key. When people are bringing initiatives to you for your approval, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, rubber stamp everything. No, but be open-minded. Listen to what they have to say. Have your people or do the background research on it. But there is going to be investment in this, and some of it's going to be money, some of it's going to be time. But it both have to happen. And in the end, again, anecdotally, the savings will come from less lost time is one of the big ones. Next slide. One of the biggest challenges that we've had in our wellness program is obviously communication. And one of the biggest challenges we see in our cultures is different people have different conduits to our resources and whatnot that they feel comfortable accessing. Some feel more comfortable reaching out to our association office. Some feel more comfortable reaching out to management. Some people are more comfortable reaching out to the peer support team. So what we did is, under the different kind of options that people had, we tried to create and open up more opportunities so that it was easier for the person that wanted to reach out to the wellness team or the peer support team. They had options for doing that. You know, if it's tough, but you got to kind of find out what works for you. And again, this is one of those things. There is no one solution. You know, I know some people have great success with Facebook. Other people have great success with Twitter accounts, emails, web pages. Do it all. Do it all, because depending on how old the demographic of the member, it's going to be whether or not they're going to go onto Twitter, whether or not they're going to go onto Facebook, whether or not they're actually going to go and search for a website. And you don't want any of these simple little things to actually be barriers to somebody accessing the help that they want. That's pretty much what I have to say in a nutshell. Brent, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Scotty. All right. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending where you are. It's really great to be here. So I've been a police officer for 23 years. The last 4, I helped, I guess, found the wellness section, and hopefully you're going to take a few of my takeaways from this, things that I found that we did well and things that we could have improved upon, and pro tips that we kind of learned along the way. Just to let everybody know, the way we operate in Ottawa, and I think a lot of municipalities across would be the same, although we all, fire, police, paramedics, are all getting paid from the city of Ottawa, it's actually quite divided. So I obviously, my chain of command responds to the police service board within, and that's a completely separate budget lines and operating system. Although it all comes out of the city, it's definitely different, our reporting and the way we get approval. Where the EPS is the Emergency Protective Services, that's where fire and paramedics fall under with the city. So what Lorraine kind of touched on, she goes, we all came from different line elements for budget-wise. We all had different, ways of coming into this, and the way we're funded and the way we're actually supported. But we actually found the common ground between each other, and that, I think, is the big takeaway for everybody, is that it doesn't matter what training you get or how you got trained or whatever, you can find some common ground to work together. And I don't think that Ottawa really should be that unique, although what we hear is that it seems to be, right, that most police, fire, and paramedics don't work together in municipalities across this country. So next slide, please. Okay, so here it is, folks. From my perspective, there are many pathways, exactly what Scotty just said, for many different people. So peer support, I'm the coordinator of the peer support. I always called myself the original gangster of wellness. I was the guy that walked in here with one other person and then my partner, and I was doing anything reactionary. So peer support, I was trying to organize critical incident stress management, anything that anybody was suffering with that I was doing. My partner at the time, 4 years ago, his title was resiliency. So he was supposed to build programs to sort of, how do we swim upstream and capture it, right? How do we get ahead of this before they become into Brent's bucket and I'm scrambling, right? What we found in the 4 years is that it was simply not enough. We needed much more resources within Ottawa Police to actually help our members. So we've actually increased in 4 years. We've gone from 2 sergeant positions to there's now 4 positions. I actually call it the 5th beetle. We have another person that just does all our data management for us. So we have like a business information system person that helps us with our early intervention program. So my job continues to be peer support. When people are reacting, then I'm the person that sort of helps guide them. We continue to have a resiliency and an early intervention. So how do we start tracking all the critical incidents that our members are going to? And we've just launched a program April 1st to do that. We also have another sergeant position that came in, Kelly Lyle, and she Her job is reintegration and fitness incentives, right? So reintegration is, you know, taking a nod to our brothers and sisters in the Edmonton Police Service who founded a program 10 years ago to really create this idea of when people are off or when they go through a critical incident, how do they come back to the workplace, right? And then we also, in taking a lead from the Chief Coroner's report into 9 police suicides in 2018, we have a resource navigator, for lack of a better term, a civilian member who is our equal amongst the 3 sergeants, who helps us navigate our members to find resources or help them navigate their family members to find resources. So my point here, folks, is that, you know what, your program cannot be all about peer support. If you think you're going to put all your eggs in peer support and that's going to solve your problems in your organization, totally not going to happen, and you are going to be left struggling. And I can tell you, for us, that when I started, it was like drinking from Scott Patey's fire hose, right? He turned it on and it was like people were phoning me constantly. And we launched our R2MR program. They'd explained to me in the color scheme, but I would have like 3 or 4 phone calls a day. And it was like all those phone calls wasn't just like, okay, here, I'll send you a resource sheet and you're done with. These are people that I would have to track for months and months. So you really have to have multiple pathways for people to come in to a wellness program, right? You need obviously the right leadership team, which Scott touched on. You need your support from your command structure. If you don't have that, you're going to be basically trying to crawl uphill, right, backwards, and it's going to be very, very slow. You actually need to take a look at all your programs and start rejuvenating them right from the beginning. And you have to start saying, okay, we need to fix this. Or maybe CISM isn't working, right? Maybe the Mitchell model isn't for us. Maybe we need to move towards a peer support with a Tiger team embedded in it that helps members when a critical incident does come out, right? Maybe you need to start looking at people, who can I lean on that has done a lot of critical incidents? You just need to start finding those people, right? So, you know, you really need to expand what the needs are of your organization, find out what it is. We have a ton of needs that came forward. Some of them were very basic, like I need to find a clinician. So when I walked into the position, I phoned up Lorraine Downey and said, hi, Lorraine, it's Brent. I was told to phone you because I don't know anything. And Lorraine's like, hey, Brent, here's our list of clinicians that we have. Because when I went to our disability management people, they had 4 names for me to send out to 2,000 members of Ottawa Police. It was not going to cut it, right? It was something that we needed to work together in order to come up with a vetted list of clinicians. So that was something that I identified within days of starting this program, right? You know, I always thought I was going to come into this program and it's like, yeah, it's like a car, take it out for a drive, you know, just put the key in the ignition. What I found out is that I actually had to build the car as I was driving it down the highway, which was extremely difficult, right? And then absolutely what Scotty says, you got to embed this in your culture of your service. Change culture takes a long time. Don't expect that you're going to launch a peer support program and everything is going to be a sunshine and lollipops. That's not going to happen, folks. It takes years to have, you know, that culture shift that we're looking for. And I think we're just starting to get that. So with Ottawa Police. So, okay, so that's, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. Here's my caveat, folks. This is a video. I'm going to want you to think about what your peer support program is going to look like. This is what ours look like. It's a 2.5-minute video. I think it's going to, I'm hopeful it's going to work. If it doesn't work, then there's a link at the bottom. You guys are going to have the ability to grab the slide deck later. You can view it. There is a YouTube out there. You can come to our Ottawa Police website, our external one. You can view it there. But I'm hopeful this is going to work. So let's try the video there, Emily.
Rowan. Joanne Saltonday. Christian Petkevich. Anna Kolodowska. I'm the widow of Constable Eric Chapman.
2011, my daughter was born September 24th. 2012, she passed away to leukemia.
I was one of the supervisors working the day that Cal took his life.
I was involved in a police shooting where I was seriously injured and wounded, and told I would never return to work in 1995.
I felt lost. I felt hurt. I felt alone. I felt like I was the only person in the world that it happened to. My friends would come to me and say, oh, I understand how you feel. I lost my father, so I know how it is. And I thought, well, no, you don't. It's very different. I lost my husband. He was murdered in front of the hospital. And of course, I couldn't tell it to people because that would hurt their feelings. So, and I didn't want to do through that. But at the same time, every single time somebody would come to me, I would feel hurt.
The day my daughter passed, it was my son's birthday. I belonged to the Patey team at the time, and we had a lot of support from our colleagues at work. I felt I was the only one that ever lost a child far from it. There's lots of people who've been through this kind of tragedy.
One of the senior officers on duty that day came up and he checked on me. I was tremoring inside, but I was focused on the task. Well, I don't think he even realizes the difference and impact he made just by asking me how are you.
Through the help of peers. And that was the biggest part, is what got me to be able to return back to work and recover when every doctor said I would never return to work or never come out to this job.
The humanity part of life really is the most important.
It's not so much what's said, it's someone being there, just to know they're there.
I know the first time I met with a group of peers with involved shootings, after about one sentence, I knew I didn't have to talk anymore. I saw it in their eyes. They understood, they knew exactly what I was going through. And for once, I didn't feel alone.
That's great. So yeah, folks, like that's, to me, that's authenticity. And that's what you want for your program. You want people that work in your organization, the people that know them, and to have them tell their quick story, right? A very simple video, and I'm sorry it was kind of the lag between the audio and the visual, but when a very simple video can really change what people are going to think. It's going to educate them what peer support is, because I would say if you're just starting a program in your organization, people have no idea what peer support is. And what you need to tell them, it could be for policing, it could be about the shoot, but it's probably going to be about something else in your life that you're struggling with. That's, or at least some of the takeaways that I've found. It's not all about the traumas that our members are going through. The traumas just compound your life challenges, right? So that's one of the things that I would really harp on, is that don't let somebody else tell your story. Tell your story, right? And let the words of the people that work for you explain how we can help improve it. Next slide, please. All right, so what does my peer support team look like? We launched in 2018. We had 70 applicants to our team. I was worried that I wasn't going to get 15 people, right? The rule of thumb for your organization when you first start out, 1%, right, of your organization should really have, you should have 1% of your organization be part of peer support. You take that number, that's your starting point, folks. Moving from there, you need to have probably a lot more. We're looking at expanding from 30, you know, we should have had probably 20 or 21. We had to take on 37, and even that, we're looking to expand to 50 this year. I talked to York Regional Police just a couple weeks ago. They're looking to go in from 50 to 75, and they are pretty similar to our complement within Ottawa Police, right? One of the key differences that we did when we launched our program compared to fire, paramedics, whatever, we have existing currently serving members, both civilian and sworn, that are part of peer support. We also have family members, and we also have retirees. Lorraine always jokes, people don't retire from paramedics. They leave being a paramedic, but they never retire, because it's like age 65. Who wants to hump, you know, people out of buildings at age 65, right? So, but we thought for policing, it was super important that we had our retiree complement, because I'll tell you, in wellness, I'm dealing with a lot of people who are retired from this job, or a veteran of the job, as I like to refer to them as, and they are suffering much more than even some of our current. They didn't have the coping mechanisms in place that our younger officers have. They didn't do check-ins with psychologists. They didn't even talk about it. What they did, they drank, right? And now that it's come when they leave policing, they have fewer services available to them, and they have more problems. So that's what I have found. So yeah, we're looking at expanding our program. It's one of the main things that I would recommend, that you have a policy and you have a procedure built around your program. We have it in paper. We actually have a confidentiality agreement that all our peer supporters sign. We have it, we tell people when we will breach confidentiality, and we based it simply on what a clinician would do it, right? If there's danger to self, danger to others, somebody in the vulnerable sector is being abused, right? These are things that we couldn't live with, right? Make sure that your management is on board with that, and they believe in it too, right? They know that when your peer supporter is going to have to breach. I've only had to breach confidentiality twice in kind of like 4 years, and that was only because I feared somebody had a plan and they were enacting a plan. So that gives you an idea that doesn't happen very often, right? Okay, next slide, please. Perfect. Okay, pro tips. First pro tip, I would say, keep the data, right? Keep whatever it is that you're going to start grabbing for, that about your program. Keep that, because I'll tell you, bean counters know one thing. They know how to count beans, and they're going to want to know how many beans they're giving you and how many beans it's going to take to get people back to work. That is their driver force behind wanting you to have a peer support program, right? On the left-hand side, I broke down some of the data sets that we gather. We gather demographics, so male, female, civilians, sworn, family members, retirees, right? Who do we communicate with? The employee status, are they working? Are they sick? Are they returning to work? What's the nature of the challenge? Is it personal? Is it work? Is it family related, right? The time we're spending, the type of supports that we're giving them. Are we listening? Are we helping them refocus? Are we giving them next steps? And then, who's supporting the members and how is it classified? So all my 37 peer supporters, that I have them on a tracking sheet, and I know they identify them on the R2MR scale, green, yellow, orange, and red, and they tell me, so I'm able to track how many red files my peer supporters have, so they're not burning out, or hopefully not burning out. And how many people, I can track how many peer supporters are actually helping peers, right? And I can tell them. So I'll tell you, in kind of since we launched in 2018, we've had over 150 people through our program. We've had mostly, it's kind of evenly split, male, female. We've had a few more sworn members than civilian members, which is good because we have actually more sworn members than civilians in our organization. But I have all these abilities to track it, right? And when I do track these, no identifiers should be there, right? So make sure that your people that come through your program, we don't track anything other than, are they male and female, are they civilian, or are they sworn? We don't want to make sure their names, because for certainly there are several layers of oversight with policing in Ontario, and we never want the data that we're collecting on our members to be used against them. That will defeat our program, right? Much like the confidentiality, if their information gets out and it becomes like a high school gossip session, that will kill your program as well, and that's what we have found. Next slide, please. Pro tip number 2. Okay, employ an outside bad guy, right? So for us, we employed, I like to, I listen to CBC, don't judge me, and we hear about collaborators. And I'm like, at first I was like, what do you mean collaborators? That sounds really evil. It's like World War II and we're collaborating. You know what? You need collaborators. You need people that see your side, and you need the bad guy. You need an outside, whether it is you hire a company or you get a Brent MacIntyre or a Scott Patey from an allied agency to come in and sit on your boards when you're vetting people to see if they're going to be a good fit. You need somebody to tell them, to be able to tell your people that are coming through that don't make the cut, yeah, sorry, you're not ready yet, right? It's not that we don't like you, we love you, but you're not ready to be a peer supporter yet. So this collaboration, have somebody from the outside of your organization, will absolutely help you guys as you create a team. So, explain the intention of the program. Most people won't have any idea. That's why I made that video. Do advertisements, get focus groups in, bring people in to ask them what their opinions are, and then do the old Cartesian graph. It's like, okay, don't tell me what's going to make a peer support team successful. Tell me what's going to kill it, right? So, when we did that with focus groups, people were just like, you know what? If you make it part of your promotional process, that will kill the program, right? So you got to have this, right? Have a process in place, an actual process. We did an application process. Paramedics did one where you were nominated from your peers. But the key takeaway for you, make sure you have a panel interview, that you actually make sure those people that are coming forward that want to help are able to, they're in the right place at their time to help, right? You know, employee resource groups, make sure you have a policy and a procedure, something in writing of why you're doing things and when you would breach confidentiality. Those are very key takeaways, right? You're eventually going to have to convince your management you need money to make money, right? As they say, you need money also to save money. So you're going to need to spend some money on resources, either time or money, to actually make sure a process like this exists. All right, next slide, please. Pro tip number 3 from me to you would be find your partners. Find them who you can actually work with, right? For me, a very simple one, find your clinician list and make sure they're vetted, right? So find your Lorraine Downeys who already started one and then work from there. Find out who your people are actually going to see and put them, collate them all on a document, because people will be asking you time in, time out when, you know, peer supporters will be asking, like, who do I refer them to? We are not clinicians. We are just trying to point people in the right direction. Refocus, you know, focus on hope, focus on resiliency, focus on next steps. That's what the key to the program is. It's simply one avenue to getting people to help, right? Think of the new ways for the old problems, right? So for us, we embedded a psychologist. We actually, you know, Ottawa, you would think we'd have, you know, tons of money, but we can't find money to hire a psychologist permanently on staff. So what we did, we found a psychologist that had been working with our tactical teams, that was retiring from our children's hospital, that wanted to give back, and he decided to give his time. He wanted to do one day a month, or every second week, and it turned out every week he's in our building now, right? We gave him a building pass, we vetted him, he signed an MOU, and then he billed directly to our paramedical services, right? We embedded a psychologist inside of our police station. It didn't cost us anything, right? Because we found the right person at the right time to do that, right? Find other organizations that you can refer your members to, right? Outside partners make things easier. A couple ones that I support, Camp Aftermath, it's a voluntary board, it's a charity. It's basically Habitat for Humanity, but with a bent with a mental health professional, and it's a one-year program. I helped found the foundation along with Lorraine and Scott, the Ottawa First Responders Foundation. Ottawa Police partnered with Wound Warriors Canada, and the Women in Defence and Security is another great resource. We're very lucky in Ottawa. We have a ton of public safety personnel and organizations that we can help. So that's something that I would point you to. Look for your allied partners, because they will make your life a lot easier. And final slide, please. Pro tip number 4. Okay, this is one of the programs that kind of grassrootsy. This came from my partner in crime, Steve Bond. We're calling it Blue Buddy. This is simply about adding somebody's name to your staff profiles that you would want at your darkest day to come to your house to explain to your wife that you're in the hospital or something's happened to you. This is something that would only be accessible to the people in wellness, that they could see it, because what we know from the 4 years is that there are many pathways, and I don't know everybody in a 2,000 person strong organization. What I do know, I know most people if they have 10 years of service or more, but I don't know the new recruits. So if we get them at the new recruit stage and they actually put in somebody that they're close to on the organization, that only they see it and we see it in wellness. So when somebody comes forward and drops a name and says, you got to check in on this person, they're struggling right now, they may not want to talk to a Sergeant Brent MacIntyre because I'm just the wellness guy. Maybe the wellness person, Brent, could find who their Blue Buddy is, phone them to make sure they have the supports in place. That's something that's very simple you can do. And that's something that we're going to be rolling out this year that we've got getting our approval on, right? So this is stuff that you got to start thinking outside that proverbial box, right? And then final slide, please. That's it. That's how you get in touch with me, folks. Peer-to-peer is only one aspect of kind of the wellness strategy, and hopefully you picked up a couple of things. And I'm really only 3 minutes over my allotted time, so I'm giving myself a pat on the back, because usually I can talk for hours about this type of stuff. I get very passionate about it. So I'm happy to answer any questions along with my partners here.
All right, thank you so much to all 3 of you for your great presentation. So much great information. So we do have some questions here. If you haven't asked a question in the question box, but you want to go ahead and ask it out loud, just raise your hand now, and I'd be happy also to call on you. So first question that we have is from Gail, and she says, first of all, thank you. She says her experience is first responders accessing help sometimes see it as a weakness. She loves the idea to connect everyone at least yearly. How do you create that change, that reaching out is normal? How do you, I know that's the hardest question, is how do you create that cultural change that reaching out is normal? But just your thoughts on that. And I'll start with Lorraine.
I think one of the things we've done is we're now telling our new recruits that it's okay that we should be talking to a mental health professional on a regular basis. So planting the seed early. It doesn't mean we can change the minds of people that have been there 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but at least our new recruits seem to be very open to that. And then I find it a success when I go to a hospital and waiting for triage and I hear a medic talking about they saw their psychologist yesterday, and I'm like, yes, because they're talking about it in public with their peers that they're seeing a mental health professional and it's okay. So we've really turned a corner, I feel, at least in our service.
And Brent, your thoughts?
So making it part of the normal culture. So I talked about that embedded psychologist. You find the right people at the right time, and you make it easy for them to access care. For us, it was like, I'm going to schedule an appointment with a psychologist, like I would make a meeting with my staff sergeant, right? It's the same sort of thing. You can do it right when you're at home or right at work, and you as if you were doing it when you're on your days off, right? Make it very normal. And I would say, yes, starting young helps. You get I found the new recruits within policing are much more open to seeing somebody. And I always tell them, find your clinician early, find it before you get injured, make sure you make it a yearly check-in. It's the best, $12 deductible pack of smokes you'll ever buy for yourself, right? And it's like, and then I use humor a lot, right? I try to be real about it, like being authentic is key. Having people come forward and talk about their worst days and say how they got help, that I think is the game changer.
Okay, perfect. And Scott, last thought to you on this one.
One thing I'll reflect back to was in Brent's presentation talking about all the people that are included in your peer team. One of the reasons why that's so important is we can get that 5-year guy or gal on the job that grew up through school with Bell Let's Talk and gets mental health and no sale required. And they know the value in it, and they are nominated to be on your peer team, and they meet they're successful and they're a member of your peer team. But then we get a call from the 32-year veteran, and it doesn't matter necessarily how well that peer individual, that peer team member can go through the different processes and steps and so on, but reflecting back about selling to your audience, that individual may have a hard time listening to that rookie, because in our culture, a rookie should have nothing to say for the first 10 years on the job. Sorry, cultural thing. So that's one of the things that you want to keep in mind, is that, they have that option to talk to somebody that is more of their peer. You can have the opposite effect. You can have somebody that from that dinosaur age that is not comfortable with talking about it. So the last person they want to talk to is that buddy or brother or sister they came on with 30 years ago. They would rather talk to somebody that doesn't know them as well. So having that spectrum of demographics on your peer team is really, really important. The other big thing I think that's important is from management, from your training divisions, however they come, mental health training is paramount. That's where the discussions start. That's where in smaller groups where people might be more comfortable asking questions, opportunities for other more respected people that might be in the group to engage in conversation. It's talking about what's going on out in the workplace, how prevalent it is, educating people on that. And then I think that really leads to what Lorraine had talked about starting the discussions, or when the discussions do start, less people are going to go, that's horseshit. Pardon, sorry. Brent, I thought you were supposed to do that. We had a bet who was going to swear first, so. But yeah, basically, yeah, that's what I would suggest. So.
Okay, perfect. I am going to go to a live question from Ruth Leonard. I'm just going to unmute you, Ruth, so you can go ahead and ask your question. You just have to unmute yourself now. Oh. Just says that you've muted yourself, Ruth. So if you want to mute yourself to ask your question. If you can't, for some reason, you can always put it in the question box as well. I'll give you a couple more seconds here. So I am going to go on to another question, Ruth, just because we're kind of on limited time here. So I'm going to go to my next question, and the next question is from Patty also. I'm just going to unmute you, Patty. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself. Just 2 levels here, unfortunately.
Hi there. Just had a question for you. Oh, is there 2 Patties?
No, you're good, Patty. Go ahead.
I'm with OSI Can Manitoba. We do community-based peer support for people in our first responder community and military community. So one of the things that I'm encountering in Manitoba here is that getting access into these different organizations like Winnipeg Police Service and RCMP have been great, but I'm having trouble accessing organizationally like the paramedics and the firefighters, except for those that are rural. It seems like the urban-centered ones tend to be very hands-off, and I'm just not sure how best to go about that.
Perfect, Patty. So I will I'll let Lorraine answer that one first, and then we'll get a few words from Scott as well.
Thanks.
Sorry, Lorraine.
Okay, so what exactly are you offering, Patty?
Well, OSI Can offers peer support groups. Like that is like the primary thing. It's peer support groups for multi-agency, because it's not about, we don't talk about the specific trauma that happened to lead a person to, require or to come to a peer support group. It's simply to provide a safe space to talk about what's going on for them in the now and what they're struggling with currently. We also provide a different group for the family or caregivers of the person with an OSI, so that they can learn about that self-care that they need to do, just to, support the caregiver. We also, take applications for people that are prescribed a support dog, like a service dog, and equine therapy. So it's kind of a multi-tiered thing that we do. But honestly, like the pillar is those peer support initiatives, and basically having people that are potentially in crisis, potentially not yet in crisis, but are noticing that they're starting to struggle. All the facilitators for OSI.
How long is it sustainable that every day I come to work now, I'm afraid of an email?
Oh, you for my.
I'm afraid.
Oh, sorry. So all the facilitators are police officers, they're firefighters, they're paramedics, they're people like frontline healthcare, that sort of thing. And all of them have had an OSI.
Okay. So my question would be like, how have you approached the organizations? Like, have you gone through management? Have you gone through frontline? Who have you approached to kind of get buy-in? Have you talked to the frontline workers, or have you talked to management, or a combination? Like, have you, what is?
There's a lot of engagement from those services, peer support people that are working in the front lines and working with other people in those front lines. Where we tend to find it's more of a challenge is getting the support from either their leadership or even access to their unions to let everybody know about the tools that are available, the resources available. We try to do the same thing and making it as easy for people to access as possible. We don't require a diagnosis or a referral. It's if you're in our professional target demographics, you get to attend. No questions asked, right? As long as you're maintaining that confidentiality, you're good.
Scott may have some suggestions from the union perspective, because he has a strong background in that as well.
Okay.
Sorry, you said you were from Manitoba, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, sorry. I don't know how much luck you've had reaching out to Winnipeg. I would start with them because they're going to be the largest on the professional urban side as far as associations are concerned, and reach out to their executive president and ask them, do you have a peer support program? Do you have a contact person I can reach out to? Explain what you have to offer, and you're probably going to have more success going through the association executive to reach that urban membership than you might necessarily going through management sort of thing. It's just, it's a funny cultural thing. I could go on and on and on about why and how or my own thoughts on it, but just surmise it's a cultural thing. But I think that speaking to the associations, they're well organized there. They have various different portfolios for the different needs of their association, whether or not they've got a full wellness program or they've got a peer support program. I would reach out through them and start with that, because then if you sell it to them, then that gives you the open door into the labor force.
Yeah, definitely Winnipeg has
Sorry,
been.
Patty, I'm just going to cut you off for 1 second just because we are running out of time. Lorraine and Scott's emails will be available, so certainly feel free to contact them. I'm sure they're both welcome to you contacting them separately. You can go 100%. In more detail into this. So I don't know whether you guys have to rush off or whether we can do a couple more questions. What are your thoughts?
I'm good.
Okay. So just another quick question then. I'll start with Brent on this one. To what extent is management involved in strategically coordinating peer support activities and advocating for peer support within the organization, as opposed to responding to your requests? So as opposed to you having to just make a request, do they actively try and support you?
Yeah, so in the 4 years that I've been doing this, there's been a good shift, right? They really didn't know what I could offer before, and now it's more of as soon as there's a critical incident, as soon as an officer is charged criminally, as soon as there's an investigation going on, as soon as there's 1,000 different things, their first mindset is really about, okay, let somebody activate wellness, make sure that they're aware of it. So it's really kind of changed from me pushing uphill to now they're kind of pushing out, what have we done as wellness aware of this? So it goes, it's been very kind of, it's been a really good sort of improvement overall. They've really kind of wanted to push the idea that no matter what has happened, it's like this is still our employee, and that we need to offer some supports, right, in place. We push back from wellness too. I would suggest that's another like pro tip. Make sure the chain of command does their commanding. Make sure that it's not, they may not want to hear from Brent MacIntyre in wellness, because that's my job. They don't really maybe know me, but they do know their immediate staff sergeants or their sergeants, and they do want to hear from them. So it is a sort of, there has to be sort of equal sort of footing for both. There's a role for wellness, and we always say we're here to support the chain of command, but the chain of command they have to earn their $5 extra an hour, right? They have to engage with their membership. They have to make sure that they are asking those questions. For too long, we were siloed. It's like, oh, that's a wellness thing. Just let wellness deal with it. No. We're here to support the chain of command. You guys are the ones supporting your member. We will also support if they want to talk to us specifically about certain questions, stuff like that. But you're the one that has to actually actively engage too.
Perfect. So I saw Lorraine and Scott kind of nodding along with that. So I am just going to move on to another question, and I'll send it to Lorraine. Do you think that access to EAP programs, so employee and family assistance programs, has gone up with the increased awareness and encouragement provided by the peer support?
I think it has, and it will. We were very fortunate that Morneau-Chapelle has done specific sessions for us and for Ottawa Fire, because we both use the EFAP for Morneau-Chapelle. So they've spent time to really educate the peer support members so we can better encourage our peers to use the EFAP and what they actually offer. Because my version of what EFAP could offer and what they actually did were two different things until this session. So I think having us well trained in EFAP, we can then better refer as appropriate to people that could benefit from EFAP. So I think it will, and I think it has gone up since COVID.
Okay, perfect. So one question for Scott now. We have a question from Steve. He currently operates a peer support group for responders with PTSD. He's a retired firefighter who's actually working on earning his master's in counseling psychology. And so he wants to know, he still hears anecdotally a lot of nightmare scenarios about how PTSD is handled by employers. Do you have any perspectives or advice on how to make this change with employers on how they handle mental illness?
Honestly, I think change has to happen at the top. It has to be from the top down, as much as it is from the, bottom up. There has to be a common understanding that everybody has a role to play in this. From, if you want to draw a loose line, to health and safety, they've promoted that health and safety is everybody's responsibility. Well, this is mental health and safety. And I think when you can start having those conversations with your leadership team and show them the value, not just from a moral perspective, but a financial perspective as well. These are not going to be quick one half-hour meetings and stuff. It's going to take time. But we went from, I remember years ago getting a phone call from an individual who was, I guess, technically the first PTSD diagnosis in Ottawa fire. It's going back almost 12 years ago. And because he had a couple of chiefs show up in his office, giving him a hard time because how long his reintegration into the workplace was taking, because he couldn't get back working full 24-hour shifts right away and all the rest of it. And like, this set this guy back 6 months in his treatment. We've gone from that to where we are today, where we have a joint wellness committee with management. We meet quarterly. We have assigned terms of reference between management and our labor organization, or OPFFA. Basically, I can count on half a hand the number of times now that we've been told no for stuff that we asked for. And we always try to be cognizant of expenses and everything else. And we always look for cheaper ways or better ways, or always being mindful, because we know that it's not a bottomless pit. But at the same time too, we have an established annual budget that gives us, and we have latitude with it at the committee level to make strong recommendations of how we feel those resources can be best spent. And with the relationship we have with the leadership team now, they're very much about, you guys got good handle on this reins, let us know what we can do. And to the point now, when I get a phone call that there was an infant mortality or an infant death, and the guys are struggling, I get a call from my platoon saying, hey, you're on duty. Can you go over and talk to these guys? Yep, no problem. Chief, can you pull my rig out of service that I'm in charge of? I'll send my guys up to the gym for a fitness hour. I drive over to that station. I pull that pump out of service so we're not getting interrupted. And I know some people out in the realms of this audience that have smaller organizations, that might be less viable. But more than once, I've gone in to have a chat with somebody that we've pulled the rigs out of service, and 45 minutes later, I'm calling the platoon chief and say, we need somebody in on overtime. This person needs to go home and see somebody. So you've got to have that kind of working relationship. This is not about check boxes. Oh, well, legislation says that you should be doing this, or, if you want to make health and safety arguments, Health and Safety Act arguments, you can make it on this. Put all that aside. It's about doing the right thing for the people that are there doing the work day in and day out. And when you start expanding that that appreciation for those observations across the leadership team, I'm not going to say gears get greased with a lot of grease necessarily, but they will start turning. They will.
All right, we'll just do a couple more quick questions here. Lorraine, next one's for you. This is from Lisa, and she's in Waterloo. She says, we're in the very beginning stages of peer support in the region. What programs do you recommend for peer support training?
So we've done a number of programs. We've done Assist, we've done Manners, we've done the IFF, which I found it was a great program, the one that Ottawa Fire invited us to. I quite enjoyed it. It's whatever is going to work for you. There's no magic. This is the best peer support program. It's whatever is going to work for you with the needs that you have. It also comes back to budget. Like Brent had a larger budget, so he went with a private company with specialized training. The next intake we're doing right now, we're doing our clinical director is going to be doing the 2 days of peer support training. because of COVID and a few other regulations just to make it work, because most of it's going to be virtual from now on, and we haven't quite figured out how to get the training done. So it's whatever you can work for your organization, something that gives them the meat and potatoes of peer support, and then go with it.
Do you think it's maybe important to maybe have a combination of different opportunities as much as you can based on budget?
If you can, that would be great. And if it's just a starting point, I have members, I don't have the entire organization trained in assist, or my team is not all trained in assist and manners and mental health first aid. Everyone has little pockets. I still have members that their original training was critical and stress debriefing. So we have an evolution, we've been evolving, but we've taken advantage of every training program, webinar, everything that we can get our hands on through the Royal stuff that Brent has included us in, Scott has included us in, joint things that we've done. Every opportunity adds tools to your toolbox. Don't expect to have all your tools the first week. It's going to be a process.
Perfect. All right, so last question I'll give to you, Brent. With budgets always being a concern, what are some strategies to gain the support of upper management in investing in mental health and wellness resource programs? So how can you, I guess, prove that the money's worth it?
The infinite question, what's the ROI? That's what bean counters, they want to know what the ROI is. I can't tell you that, right? I mean, there is some studies out there talking about for every dollar spent, you're going to save $4 down the road. We're going to see this. What we know, what I tell people is what you've been doing isn't working. So I can tell you right now, we have an increase in WSIB claims because of presumptive legislation, people actually seeking help. You're going to have an increase in people going off and needing that help. You're going to see an increase in people needing, the IPP, that's what we call it here, is, the investment in your protection fund, on sick leave, right? You're going to see this. We have had record numbers of people being off, and that's no secret here. It's out of control. So you start looking at it and say, well, what are you going to do that's different than what we have been doing for the last, 10 or 15 years? This isn't going to be like the magic bullet, people. Like, the peer support isn't the thing that's going to solve all your problems. It takes culture shift, right? And so what I would kind of say to that is that this is only one aspect. We have to start looking at other things, such as a reintegration process. What are you going to do when we're a trauma-infused occupy employer, and what are you going to do when people go through a trauma? So what is your solution? Your solution is go see your family doctor and come back to work whenever you want to come back. That is unacceptable. So what are the things that we can do as an employer to actually point to actual programming, say, here we are, we've identified you, you're struggling, we're here to help you to get back to the green, as the R2MR would say, right? Or get back to your best possible health. So I would turn the tables and say, yeah, there are studies that say there's a 4-to-1 investment return, right? But let's look at what has been happening and what you haven't done to date. Turn the table on them, ask them those questions, right? You're going to just keep doing the same old thing, right? Just keep putting people in the breach, right? They're still going to be crushed, It's like, all right, so let's try different strategies, right, to address this issue.
And that was our perspective with our management team on kind of getting into more of the preventative components, and that is, we had to start some new initiatives and new projects, and required some, funding in different forms. And, we said, listen, the studies are coming out that early intervention is one of the best keys in dealing with OSIs and PTSD. It's been a while since we've had visions of somebody suffering from PTSD swirling at the bottom of a 40-ouncer every day. Sometimes, that's almost the worst case scenario next to somebody following through on a plan. What can happen if we can make contact with that individual and start offering support and services 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years earlier? How is that going to impact or reduce the expense that their situation is going to have on the employer, because they've started their treatment sooner, they've done the recognition, they're changing the way they live their lives, they're making a lot of the behavioral changes. So maybe that's going to be one that hopefully is not going to end up all of a sudden being off indefinitely or for years at a time, and so on and so forth, adding more and more expense to the employer. So you kind of got to, like Brent said, it's all about the beans. You got to talk their language, and also use, everything's always about, research based, and there's research out there. Start using it. Ultimately, if you put it on the table first, it's up to them to find something to credibly debunk it or you know, they're just going to be saying, oh no, that's not right. And I mean, there's no credibility in that. So use the information that they're in the research to justify your requests.
Perfect. All right. Well, I want to thank you all so much for speaking today. You guys were great. Such great information. Thank you for providing a little bit of extra time and to everybody who stayed for the extra questions. There's going to be a quick survey at the end of the webinar. We hope you'll take a moment to complete it just so we can learn more about what you're looking for when you're attending these sessions. We also hope you'll consider joining us the next town hall, which is May 13th. And it's called First Responders to First Responders, listening to the voices of strength and need from PSP families. And that'll allow us to explore the impact of PSP work on families, which is a big issue nowadays, and probably already always has been. The link for this event will be included in your video follow-up to this email. As I said, we will be posting this video online probably tomorrow. And all the information and contacts, I know that Lorraine, Brent, and Scott would be happy to hear from you and help you answer your questions further, anything that we didn't get to. They're wonderful people, and they've been great for our webinar today. To you, you three, and to everyone out there, please take care and stay safe. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.